So in 2017, I lost a son. Um, it was um, he was a twin. His brother survived, and everything was fine with him. We keep checking though. It gives you that paranoia of like what's going to happen. But at the time, it was all a very sort of normal pregnancy for sort of twins. We were doing like regular checkups, sort of weekly scans and stuff, because there's lots of stuff that can go wrong with twins. So we sort of had that apprehension of something could go wrong, but it was always more of a sort of could be a disabled child if one twin's smaller than the other, which happens quite a lot. But all through it, they were all saying, no, everything's good, everything's fine. One of them's a little bit smaller, but not too much, not significant. And basically, right up until the birth was when something was wrong. Um, and they took Alex down to the neonatal unit, which is like the saddest place in the world. It's just an overwhelming sort of thick grief because everyone's down there for the same thing. But we felt really looked after. He was down there for 5 days. They tried various things. They couldn't really put their finger on what was wrong, and also why his identical twin brother was absolutely fine. Um, so it was very sort of, well, what can we do? And he started having seizures and things like that. Took him in the ambulance over to the main hospital, and he was basically having seizures through that. And then brought him back, but then it was basically we were told to get the chaplain in, and do a baptism there, and that's when we sort of really knew like it's probably going to go really really wrong. Um, in terms of feelings, it was really overwhelming at the time, and it would sort of come and go in waves because I had my other son, and my wife had a cesarean section, so it wasn't easy for her to come down to the neonatal unit because they're not supposed to move and walk about so much. So it was sort of mixing my time between them and my son who was in the neonatal unit. So that was quite difficult. And then I think I didn't really break down until I was reading a book. Somebody just recommended just go and read them a story, so I went down there to read it, and it was Pirates Love Underpants, which is a real classic sort of feel-good funny story. But I got to a part near the end where it says, so when you're putting on your underpants, and I just couldn't finish. I was just overcome with this whole, like, my grief is different because it's not like the memories aren't there of what somebody did. It's all the things that he won't do, like that I'll never know, like what his favourite football team would have been, if he was even into football. What sort of bands he was into, or would he like that? And the grief continues. It does get easier to go day by day and do your routine things, but it's always going to stay. And there's things like birthdays are quite difficult because he's got a twin brother and an older brother, and you're always thinking in the back of your mind like there should be two cakes, or what would he have wanted? Would he have wanted the same party, or would it have been like totally different sort of theme? Or would they have been okay to share things, or would they wanted like, no, I want my own separate toys and things? So that's quite difficult. And finding the sort of support after that, because you're given a lot of information and a lot of paperwork of sort of what happened. And as I said, that it basically was saying there was some kind of infection and stuff about the seizures, but there was no clear this is why he died. So there's those unanswered questions as well that I found personally quite difficult to get through. But it's a mixture of sort of time and support. There's a group called SANS, which are on Facebook. I don't really engage too much, but it's a comfort to know that they're there. So if I do feel like I'm having a particularly bad day or I need to talk to somebody, I can. And obviously working at Solent Mind, I've got a lot of support here, which really helps because people know my story and what I've been through. They're conscious of sort of dates and things like that, because it creeps up, and you never know when you're gonna see something that just absolutely brings you back to that moment. For me, it's things like hearing the little beeps in hospitals and things, because where we were sort of surrounded by it, it's just one of those things that I can't really do very well. Like, I'm fine in a hospital, but if I get near an ECG and I start hearing the beeps, I just time travel right back there, and that's still difficult to get through. It's all those sort of feelings, and like I said, you never know like what's going to sort of be a trigger. It could be seeing a twin pram or something like that coming down the street, and you're happy for people still having babies and stuff. I can still, say congratulations and stuff, but it's always going to be in the back of my mind, like, God, I hope you don't go through what I went through. But also, you don't want to talk about it too much. You don't want to tell a pregnant mother that's, beaming and wanting their child that, oh, this is what happened to me. Which is right, but I think there should be more information out there. I don't know how that's going to work, because you don't want to be going to scans and seeing, like, this is what happens if it goes wrong. But the door was sort of kicked open for us, and we weren't expecting. Everything was going well, and then that day it was just a whole new world of, like, this is what people have been going through, and it's horrible. I wouldn't swap it for anyone, but it does get easier in terms of carrying on, and I think it's easier for me as I've got two other boys, Logan and Josh. Josh is his twin brother. So even that can be quite difficult, because they would have been identical, and it's a bit sort of, when he's playing or like sees a mirror or something like that, you get that sort of lump in your chest. But it's important for me to sort of think, like, if he is sort of watching over us, then they're not going to want to see people moping around and being that sad. So it's important for me to do things that I think he would have enjoyed for him, and go out there and put myself out there and be happier with it. But yeah, it's a grief that would always be there, and it'll never get to a point where I can be happy with it. Yeah, it's always going to be a sadness, but it's easier to cope with, and easier to feel like I want to celebrate like what he could have been. And for me, it's he could have been everything. He could have been a celebrity. He could have been in the army. He could have been anything. I can make it up. But it's very difficult as well at the same time, because like I said, we've got birthdays and Christmas and stuff, and it's not the right amount of stockings, or what would he have liked, which is quite difficult at times. It's difficult to explain it because you don't want to bring it up to everybody. It is quite difficult to be anything except for a dad that's lost a son. But I've still got my other boys, and that helps a lot. And I know other people don't have that, which I wouldn't wish on anyone. But it's important to talk about, and it's important to be okay with these things happen, and there are people out there that can help, and they'll always be there to help.